Much. Sorry, and there's a lot of good discussions going on there, but want to keep things pretty much on track here. So we're in session 4 here right now, and Chris Jones, who's an owner and also CFO of Durante Rentals, is taking on the topic of managing hypergrowth, and we're going to do this without slides. Of the peanut gallery here, so we're just going to jump right into it. So when I say without slides, I'm just going to put the bio up here. You do have the bios in your book, but I do want to point out a couple of things. Actually, you have the bios in your book, and you can read what's up on here. So how about I do something more from the heart here? Yeah, I've known Chris for probably a dozen years now. Probably first met through the Business Council of Westchester. And Chris used to run his own consulting company as an outsourced CFO. And we sat on a couple of panels together, judging young businesses and their business plans and things as part of Westchester Community College, I believe, and a number of things over the years. And then I kind of got word, some time had passed, and some word I said, where's Chris Jones? Oh, he's kind of gotten into something over here. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what that is. And so next thing you know, we kind of find out that he's accepted a position. He's moved from his consulting role into a full-time position with Durante Rentals. And their story is pretty extraordinary. And so I'm going to have Chris share the story. And I'm sure John might pipe in a little bit here and there too, which would be great. We want to make this be interactive. And so I've got a few questions just to get things going, but then we just want to make it, from the audience here. So
yeah, it's more fun if it's interactive. So if you have any questions, want to go up, just go in and we'll go off. Happy to go off script.
Go off script. Excellent. So we have about an hour for this, and I'll pull up my little notes here, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'm sitting down. I'm just still recovering from knee surgery, so I'm standing. It's going to be rough.
All right, so try to do my best Phil Donahue or Phil Donahue impression here. But hello, Chris.
All right, Ted. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you here. Let's just start with a little bit of the obvious for a moment, which is here you are as part of Durante Rentals. Maybe you can just do a quick overview of what you guys do, but it's my understanding that your company's been in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies for 5 years in a row. And not only have you had that incredible result, but each time you've moved up further in the ranking, which anyone who does cumulative math for fun, that gets more and more difficult here. So you've averaged certainly 30+%, maybe 40%, even 40% year-over-year growth. Just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, achieving the level of growth, it first comes from a mindset that you have to agree from the outset that this is what you're going to do. You have to agree that there's going to be risk taken. And you have to understand your tolerance for risk as an entrepreneur and as a manager. Where is it? Where is it sitting? Is it, absolutely, we got to be safe. Everything we got to do is got to have contingency after contingency after contingency. Or are we willing to bet on some of our innate abilities and be able to go from there? So understanding your tolerance for risk, your true understanding. Everyone talks about it and they say, yeah, right, we really want to do this. But it does get nerve-wracking at a certain point. You also have to have a certain tolerance of being uncomfortable. How much are you willing to be uncomfortable? My tolerance for risk is lower than John's and Anthony's. So where do you find that happy balance in between? And sometimes it's not such a happy balance. It's a little bit of everybody being a little bit disappointed. But that's kind of where you find it in there. But you really need to understand what are you willing to risk on and how far are you willing to go. And in the beginning, that was very hard for me. And I come from an area, especially when dealing with debt. We're a leveraged company. I come from out of tech and media. Debt was a horrible, horrible thing. If anybody had debt, that was the first thing I tried to do to get rid of. But even funny story, in the first year we went down to our show, where it's a buying show for us, and I really didn't understand the nature of it because I was still new in the business. I was going to throw up at every single table. They're buying. I'm like, the joke was I was the only CFO going, don't give us credit. You know, so, but then after you learn how to use it, you know, I've learned how to use this tool called debt, and I can use it to expand and grow, where this was the first year I was actually ahead of them in that I was able to get more credit allowance than they needed. And that was the first time that we've ever had to do that. So you need to understand how to work that. And there's a level of sophistication. So are you willing to do that? Do you want everything really simple and basic and easy just so you can keep everything in your head? Fine, you don't leverage up. Do not do that. If you have the ability to put in sophisticated financial systems and the ability to monitor them, you can use leverage and you'll do very, very well. Someone said it at my table today, money's cheap. And it is. It's still really cheap, where you can get 4, 5, 6%. You know, use that and grow. But it's a different strategy, and you have to embrace it. It's not, you can't do both. You really do have to embrace, this is what we're going to do. We are going to grow. We're going to have a culture of growth. We're going to have a business of growth, and you're going to go that way. And it's not going to be easy. You're in for a rough haul. It sounds fun. You know, when you get the awards and this and that, it's cool. It's absolutely cool. But every day, it's a grind. And you got to be prepared for that. And as long as you're prepared for that, you're fine. You'll do well.
You know, Chris, in some of our prep discussions, we said, you know, probably not everyone in the audience is going to be managing companies that have 30 to 40% year-over-year growth. And we said, well, how are we going to kind of make this relevant for everybody?
Yeah.
And you had some thoughts on that.
So say 10% is an amazing year for you. Well, then it's not really changing your business model. The result metric, as Ted has taught us, the difference between result metrics and process metrics. Your result metrics are going to be what they are, and there's not a whole lot of things. So say you're in a saturated market, and 10% is a really good year for you if you did that, because the market's saturated, limited financial resources, whatever it is, and that's a good year. Then you really have to rely on your process metrics to say, well, we got to get better at on-time delivery. We cannot fail in on-time delivery because we need to keep these new clients, whoever comes to us. We cannot fail in our cycle time. And maybe it's the cycle time from production line, or even if you're in media, or is how quick we turn over a project. So if you have designers or programmers, how fast are they doing that? And you got to monitor everything. You got to monitor cycle time. You got to monitor all your processes and say, where is their ability to improve? And those you can improve 10, 20, 30, 40%, guaranteed. Anything where there's people related, you can improve that much. So maybe you can only grow top line 10%. Well, then maybe you can grow bottom line, EBITDA. So earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, otherwise known as operating profit. Maybe you can grow that 20% through cost containment, through efficiencies, you know. Creating value, I've always defined creating value as increasing revenue, decreasing costs, maximizing efficiencies. So when everyone says, well, I'm creating value, what are you doing in those 3 areas? Are you hitting all those 3 areas or one of those 3 areas? Increase revenue, decrease costs, or maximize efficiencies. 3 ways of truly creating value. And anything someone says, well, I created value, it should relate to one of those, in my opinion, and from my experience.
I have to say, this is not part of our scripted questions here, but and I won't embarrass the person because they are in the room here, but I was pretty much blown away when I came into a Durante meeting the other day, and one of the individuals, it didn't take very long before he started to describe, I just got to make sure I'm adding value to this company here. And I said, well, say a little bit more about that. And he said, well, I know what my costs are to the company, and so I got to at least be producing whatever his number was, 5, 6, 8, 10x my costs here, so that I'm dropping stuff to the bottom line. Like, really? Wow. An individual inside this company knows that part of what they have to be doing is value creation inside of the company. I thought that was pretty remarkable. All right, next question is, just talk a little bit about your decision-making processes with the management team or throughout the organization. Does everything run through the 3 or 4 of you at the top, or is it consensus-based? Does it take unanimous?
It's a bunch of all of that. The decision-making process, I find, has been pretty unique here than any other place I've ever worked. So where we do believe most of the executive decisions, it has to be unanimous. Although we all have different ownership structures, and any two of us could outvote the other person, we've always done everything unanimous. And you stay in the room until it is. And sometimes I'm fighting for this, and sometimes John's fighting for that, or Anthony, but you got to pitch it. You got to pitch it. You got to sell your idea, sell it why, where are you creating value, where is it not creating a burden on someone else unfairly, and you stay in the room until you get it done. Now, we're much better at that now. Where in the earlier years it was harder and everything took a little bit longer. We're much better at that now. But that process decision still works on the main things. We do try to make sure that the people who own their departments really are able to make some of their own decisions. We try to guide them. John's really good at that and helping to guide his employees to making better decisions. And I think the hardest thing is when we're all like, I forget which one, who's saying that the two types of people of like there's the go-getters and then the people, the hunters and farmers, right? So when we have, basically 3 or 4 with our CEO, hyper personality and A-type driven people, can you overshadow them in the room? But then you just have to be patient and don't lead them to the answer. John's really good at that. I've seen him work that. Is like, it's so easy to just give them the answer and say, you should do this. And it's frustrating to sit there and like, it's right in front of you, just and when if patience isn't one of your best traits, which isn't always one of mine, it's just, you can't give them that answer. And there's so much value in getting them to come to their own conclusion. As painful it is for you to sit there like, it's so obvious, for them it's not, because they don't have the frame of reference, or they're intimidated by you, or they're afraid of making a mistake in front of you. So all those things interfere with the answer they already know. I mean, a lot of them are like, you already know the answer. And so I give them that kind of word when I'm doing the same thing. Like, you already know the answer. I'm going to ask you a question right now that you already know the answer to. So then it just calms them down a little bit. So the decision-making process, although a lot of things start, especially from the budgeting. So our budgeting drives pretty much most of the tactical and strategic decisions. And our modeling is based on what we're going to do, how many stores are we going to add this year. How many people we're going to have to add this year. Do we have the people to be able to produce what we want to produce? Because if you're going to grow 40%, and here's, I guess, another way of going, that you have to make certain decisions. If you're going to choose the growth path, whatever that means for you, 5%, 20%, then you need to choose, are you going to hire ahead of time, or are you going to get the business and then scramble on the back end? We chose to do the former. We're going to hire ahead of time. We're going to get more than we need, more than what we did last year. We're going to buy ahead. We kind of have to. The hardest thing in our industry is we have to do all our buying for the year in the worst possible month, in February, which we have no data that really is going to indicate what the year is going to be like. February is horrible for us, and we have to do a year's worth of buying pretty much in that month. And we just have to go. And to John and Anthony's credit, they're really good at predicting what products that we need to have and where we need to expand to. And I think you need to decide, are we going to be forward thinking? So look at employees. Like, that if you just had that other business development person, you could probably get that other business. But you just want to wait, or that production person, and you want to wait till you get the business, then you hire them. Well, now you're scrambling. And what happens if you miss your first deadline? Now what? But if you have faith in your ability and your ability to go out and grow, hire that person. Get them trained. So then when the business comes, they're right there and they're ready to go. And that's kind of the way that we've always done it. It does increase your cost basis. Absolutely 100%. Because you're always trying to be ahead of the curve. And then even when you think you're ahead, if really your growth takes off, you can still get caught behind the 8 ball, which we have. Or all you need is 2 people that leave in the same month. Now what? Now you're really scrambling. So those are all things that constantly hiring, constantly looking, constantly trying to upgrade your people too. Either upgrade them or finding better and always people. So you're always hiring. You're always looking for expansion. It's never stopping. And that's what you have to be committed to. You have to be committed to never stopping to find, never stopping taking risks in certain areas, smart risks, which is why we go through all the budgeting. We know, because this way we can pivot. So one of my favorite historical figures in the way they did their planning, not for who the people were, was Napoleon. So The way he did his planning, he did this meticulous planning of a battle before, and he would stay up for days and days and do all this meticulous and write out everything, so how the battle was going to go. But on the day of battle, he threw the plan out, because he knew it was never going to come to that. And it was all the push-up, the mental push-ups and sit-ups, so you're prepared for whatever comes. And I think that's another thing that we do quite well. That was very hard for me. You know, I want to know everything, this and that, and then like you can't know. You know, but I wasn't. You know, it took me several years to accept that fact. Before all we can do is prepare as best as we can, and then when the proverbial poop hits the fan, just have the ability that you trust in your partners, you trust in your management team that they're going to do it. Are they always going to do it? Are you always going to do it? No. But if you just kind of work through it together, you should come out on top. You know, is it going to be neat and clean? Nope. But what is in life?
So I have a number of more questions that I will absolutely get to, but I want to just pause here and just have you guys start to fire away some thoughts and questions.
Can you talk a
Bobby,
little bit about
you
it,
wanted to-
as you're building, as you're doing that kind of growth? Is it really just driven by profit? Is there equity thoughts in there about, you know, I mean, you don't really run annual or multi-year contracts with your
No.
customers, so it's really just kind of point of, you know,
Month to
sale.
month.
So your equity is really what your EBITDA is at the end of the day,
Yeah.
what you can show as a
Mhm.
reliable EBITDA.
Yeah.
So there's really no equity building in there where you turn around and say, at some point, you know, we've amassed this company and it's worth this times multiple, or?
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's equity in the company. I mean, your EBITDA is going to roll into what your equity is. But how a company, there's a couple ways you can look at it, right? You can judge a value by just what you say enterprise value, or you know Warren Buffett's intrinsic value of the company, and sell on that. Or you're going to take the multiple of EBITDA.
Right.
So they're going to say whatever your industry multiple is.
Or future growth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to look at that and you sell them on however you get. In the end, when you're looking at a sale, it's whatever you negotiate. They can do this and that. Believe me, you get people like me and quants, and they're going to want to say it's this and that and subtract this and add that. It's really whatever you negotiate. You know, I'd love to say that my spreadsheets are the things that dictate everything. It's what you negotiate.
You also have you have millions and millions of dollars of capital equipment in terms of the equity business as well. The other thing I would comment is, it's been 7 years, how many years?
We're eight years.
So whatever that is, 7 or 8 times 12, 84, right? If you look at their month, year-over-year month, so where are we here? Let's say October's already closed. October was 30% more than October of 2016, which was 30% more of October of 2015. But every month is like that. So the November might not be as high as October, you know, just in the current year, maybe it's close or whatever, but it's still 30 or 40% from where it was a year ago. So I don't know if you call that equity or not, with the financial people in the room, right? But when you can show a track record of 72 straight months of year-over-year, month-over-month growth, there's something that's going pretty well there in terms of their client base. You know, they've got an ever-growing client base there as well. So.
One of the things that's always amazed me, and this is really, as a numbers person, this and that, like a lot of times I'll admit that sometimes my knee-jerk reaction when I say, oh my God, look at this thing has grown so much. Our cost in this area, in operations, our cost in payroll, it's grown so much. But then look at it as a percentage of revenue. So each year, right, you look at your cost as a percentage of revenue. That tells the story from that. And the variance of that percentage from year to year, even though the dollar amount changed, the variance of the percentage is within 0.1% for most years. So we're doing the right things in the right areas. So we're not seeing huge increases as a percentage of revenue. So that's a way, because it's like, how do you, when you're growing at 40%, how do you compare? Like 2 years ago, it was almost irrelevant because we've doubled in size. So what worked at that age isn't going to work here. So it's irrelevant. Now what? So all you can then look is as a percentage of revenue. You can say, well, that stayed, okay, we're in the right place. Our EBITDA percentage is going up. So you have to learn when to use a gross number and when to use a percentage. And learn where's the value in both of those as a percentage of revenue versus just what's the gross number. So those are really good things for you to kind of play around with. And when you see a consistency, which was amazing, it always, like I can look back to 2014, 15, 16, and the percentage of our costs as a percentage of revenue changes very little, which I find fascinating, even though the number itself will grow 30 to 40%.
You're also beginning to do more and more with external benchmarking.
Yeah.
What was that, Ted?
You're doing more and more with external benchmarking,
We,
you know, both process and result metrics, you know, dollars per employee and all of that to kind of know how you're doing.
we do, we've spent a lot of money on systems, and it's really been difficult to implement, but it helps. And the money that we've spent on it, as much as I cringe, I can't argue with it because they're really good investments that'll give me more insight. I'm able to manage better. I'm able to focus on the things that I can do better now, and even the rest of the people. We can now say, like, you know, John and Anthony's gut is really good, and a lot of times we all three of us and Jason too, we're good at like saying and this is a good process for you guys to look at. If you have people who are more intuitive in your room and then more people who are analytical, can work both ways. My intuition is that I think the marketplace will yield me 50%, 15%, and then go do the research to support that. Or the other way is say, hey, everybody else is growing at this rate. I think we can grow 20%. Then, okay, how do you feel about it, honestly? Like, do you really feel, do you have the people in place? Like, what's your real gut? When you, at the end of the day, when you're by yourself at 8 o'clock, when everyone else is gone, what do you really feel? Can you do it? And if those are always in tune, in alignment with each other, then you're probably in the right place. And we're able to go from both places like that. And sometimes we definitely have the arguments. Like, we debate a lot. We absolutely debate all the time. Some days are more healthier than other days, if I'm being dead honest. But in the end, you know, the debates usually come out to a positive, and we all learn from each other. Which is another point, right? That Ted, what was the term you used on learning? Accelerated learning. If you want to grow, you really need to be committed to accelerating learning. Not just your people, you as an individual. Who are you as a person? Do you know yourself? Do you know, it's like Sun Tzu, in his book, The Art of War, is you need to know, if you know yourself and know your enemy, you need not fear 1,000 battles. So knowing yourself and knowing your enemy, now even looking at yourself, do you know the parts of yourself that are going to do a knee-jerk reaction, that are going to shut down, that are going to close it off, and that's going to prevent a tactical and strategic discussion from taking it. So those are the hard things to do, but when you know yourself real well, and then start to then spread that out to knowing your staff real well, where their capabilities are, where their faults are, where your faults are, and understand that really well, then you can have an honest conversation about what are we going to do to grow. You know what, I'm not feeling comfortable about that because I don't know if we can do it, okay? But guess what, we can help you out here. Let's get you this help, let's get you that help. And you got to be supportive in the other departments when your managers are asking for something that they really need, whether it's a person, a tool, this or that. Sometimes it's hard to crack open the checkbook, but if you really want that, you're going to have to take certain, and that's another area of risk. It's not just customer risk, it's not just marketing risk, it's people risk. You know, can you go out and hire that manager, that salesperson, that part that you really need to balance yourself? But the accelerated learning part is, I mean, what, you go through a book a month at least?
Every other month.
Yeah, I go through a book a month. You know, just, you got to be committed to learning. There's so much. I mean, I never ran a company this size. Yeah, I never ran a company this size. My clients were 2 to 4 million. The biggest client I had was the 92nd Street Y, which is a $50 million nonprofit. But I was just in the accounting department. I didn't have to deal with everything else. This is the biggest company any one of us has ever run. And every day, it's the biggest company that any of us ever run. So there's a learning curve even for us. And you got to be honest about that. So it's like, all right, I didn't know this. And I definitely struggled at certain points. Read books, talked to people. You bring in people like Ted. And then you get educated. And then you got to learn. And you can't ever stop. You have to be committed to that learning.
I don't know if it was you or John or Anthony or all three of you made that comment about.
John, Anthony did. Yeah, so Anthony, one of the really profound things he says is if we're going to commit to 45% growth, then we as people have to grow 45%. That's really hard. Think about your life. Think about all the things you've done in your personal life. When have you had years where you grew as a human being 40%? But, right, that's what we're asking our employees to do. That's what we're asking every person to do. That's what we're asking of ourselves. That's serious transformation, you know. And I think, and we've gone through all that. I mean, we have the battle scars to prove it, and we've had, you know, really, really difficult conversations. We've had really, really difficult times, but when you come through the other side, you're able to do that. So again, do you need this level of intensity in your life? It's a choice. It's a personal choice. Do you want it? Do you need it? Can you survive without it? Probably yes. But then there'll be a certain few of you who are just going to be crazy enough to say, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. Why not? Why not? And for some people, it's like, this is stupid. I'm not going to do that. I can have a wonderful life, this, that, and you have other obligations. And that's totally cool. I think that's great. That's showing balance. It shows understanding of who you are as a person. I think that's wonderful. And not everybody needs to do this. And sometimes I wake up like, why the hell are we doing this? This is horrible. You know? But you know, then you see at the end of the year and you see everything that you've completed and you're like, how did we do all that?
That's going to bring me back to a question about, that I'll come back to about, is everybody or all, you know, 100 plus employees all wired that same way? But before I do that, Joe, I saw you had a question.
Just do
I
it.
asked about your sales force, Chris.
Uh-huh.
Are they centralized, and when you open new locations, you hire salespeople for those
Mhm.
specific locations?
Yep.
And how do you spread the magic among your sales force to have the same Durante?
That's
Fire.
the marketing department and the sales department. We're different than most rental companies. Most rental companies have an outside sales force, and then the deals go into an internal salesperson that just kind of, I don't want to dehumanize when I say order taker, but there's more on the support side of it rather than the sales and convincing side. We're different in that, you know, John's designed a marketing program where everything is through the phone calls, and the phone calls then get routed into each area, and we're able to, based on our phone system, route calls on who our strongest salespeople are, so the new people aren't getting the really complicated calls, because maybe they don't know how the boom works, and maybe they don't know how this skid steer works, you know, because they're still learning. So we can kind of shield them and use a lot of, I guess, math and science around, or the math and technology around who gets what. But the marketing department drives the phone calls, and it's the salespeople's jobs to convert. Now, an outside salesperson, they're going to get a ton more questions than an inside salesperson. So we've figured out that you can convert much faster on that, and they don't need to have the level of product knowledge. It's complicated stuff. I mean, I don't know most of the stuff. I mean, the big joke in the company is, I can't tell you how to turn anything on. I have no idea. No idea. Don't care either.
It's not
to be
a
honest.
joke.
What's that?
I said it's not a joke.
It's an absolute reality. I have no idea how to even turn on 95% of the equipment. But I know what the ROI is. I know how much they cost. I know what my payments are.
Joe, did that get at your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Stu, you had one thing?
Thinking about maybe 10, 20 years ago, I think most of the rental shops were like local, one location things, and all of a sudden, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you saw this United Rental, now I see this other company around,
Sunbelt.
Sunbelt, so those,
And
some
her.
of those guys did major roll-ups and became giants.
yeah.
How do you compete against those giants?
Believe it or not, service. It's not pricing, because we're not the cheapest. It's not the equipment, because everybody has the same exact stuff. Our stuff is a little bit newer, because we're younger and we do a good job with our fleet. Our average fleet is about 40% of the age of everyone else's. You know, we're about 20 months, and they're about 30 to 40 months. It's really on the service and your commitment to the customer. We'll do whatever it takes. You need it at 3 o'clock in the morning, we'll do it. They're not willing to do that.
Services, delivery.
Delivery.
If I said define that a little
Sure.
more.
Sorry. So the service is that you were delivered reliable equipment that works when you wanted it and for how long you wanted it. And when you have a problem, you can get to somebody who can solve your problem. And you're treated well. That's another big thing. that, they've really done a good job about that. And I'll say on my operations staff, John's teams, Anthony's team, when somebody walks in, you're greeted with a smile. And it's by one of our yard guys. He's probably filthy from working, and he's up there and he's, how are you? What do you need? Where can I go? Like, that culture of you are welcome to come here and we want you back is very different than in the corporate stores. I don't want to disparage my competitors too much, but they're very, very different in how they greet and treat people versus the family atmosphere that we've created. And that's been one of the things they come in. And I'll tell you one thing, I was telling someone this, I was really proud of my guys in Mount Vernon, that when Herc, which was a division of Hertz, opened up, and they opened up 100 yards maybe away from us, 100, 200 yards away, one block, that my guys in there went down to the Herc and says, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know. How can we help you? We want you to succeed here. They said the guys looked like they'd seen a ghost. And I was like, I was so proud. And I didn't tell them to do that. John didn't say, nobody told them to do that. They did that on their own. I'm like, that's great. Just don't be afraid of the big bad wolf. Go at them. So we usually say, like, we don't even compete with them because they're going after big customers, right? For us, a $10,000 customer, we're happy with them. That's like a fail at one of those because that doesn't move the needle when you're a $1 billion company. So
you're going after a different market.
small, medium-sized contractors, we'll take, big ones come our way, but the main thing is we really want to get paid, we want a fair price, everyone works hard, we want that all here. So we go for the customers that they don't want. And so far, we've been able to grow living off their breadcrumbs. So now do we bump heads a little bit? Would you say a little bit more? We bump heads with them? Yeah? Not as, but.
And if someone came in and said, okay, well, here's what they're quoting, I'd like to do it with you guys, would you beat the price?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get the deal. We hope it doesn't go to that because that's a race to the bottom, but it definitely has in certain products. So,
How do you advertise that? This idea that the service. I've heard Joe say it, I've heard Bobby say it, you say it, we say we stand on service. What makes your company different? Service, right? I think a lot of people say that.
yeah.
And it's true, it doesn't make it less true, it's probably very true, it probably is the reason why our companies are different. So for repeat business, that makes sense. We get a patient come in, he sees that really how incredible we are, and then they'll come back. But how do you bring people in based on service? How do you advertise service to a new client? And that's been our struggle for years.
It may be a little bit more on the new client based on convenience, and for them is how fast we turn. When we get a phone call that comes in, how fast they're able to get a quote back and turn it around versus everybody else. Now, think about it. Most of our customers, it's not the same as it was, like you were saying, like 20 years ago, where I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, there would be, in the old Durante, there was a line of people out in the morning, and they just came, and this is what they needed each day. Now all the jobs are planned in advance. You're getting calls sometimes a week or two. You're getting the purchasing manager, not some contractor that's saying, I need this and this, or they got a site manager or project manager. So it's a little bit more different. Everything's done electronically. They call, we see what they want, they get a quote, they see the quote in front of them, maybe nobody else gave them a quote, yeah, just give it to Durante, just get this done. We need to get this done because they're so busy.
So just to give you an idea on numbers, and correct me where I'm wrong here, but they're doing north of 60 to 70,000 inbound calls a year coming in, 6,000 plus a month are coming in. They're getting quotes out within how many minutes?
I think it's 8 to 15 minutes to get the quotes out.
70,000 quotes are coming, requests are coming in a year, they're getting their quotes out within 8 minutes.
So,
That's operational excellence.
yeah, it's
Can I
not.
just answer a question of
Yeah.
direct though? I don't know how you do that, we don't do that. We do what you said, is we just market the heck out of them any way we can to get them in the door. And
Yeah.
the moment we get them in the door, whether it's through a phone call or through a walk-in, we wanna show them that we've got service that they've never experienced anywhere else before. That's the marketing, is once you get them in, to do what you said.
It's all about marketing. Honestly, I really wish it was all about my spreadsheets and my models and this and that. It's not. It's all about marketing. One of the things that our commitment to marketing has been the hardest, and my best friend's in marketing too, so we always have these, debates. And, I pulled a Dilbert out one where it's like, Dilbert goes to marketing and says, marketing 2-drink minimum. They don't work in marketing. They just like think about funny stuff. But really in our marketing department, we throw a lot of stuff at the wall. And it's very hard for someone like me, like, what's the ROI? You can't tell. You really can't. But you say, okay, is there enough things that we're trying? Are we getting the growth that we wanted? Keep doing it. So for someone like me, where you're really trying to pin it down and say, what's the true marketing ROI? Really, really hard to tell. Honestly, it's really hard to tell. But as long as it's working, as long as that percentage of marketing is staying in, we spend 2 to 3% of sales in marketing, and it's producing that growth, keep doing it. Don't break it.
Do you have formal plans, a formal marketing plan?
Define formal.
Written, discussed?
Discussed what we're doing and why. Budgets, line item budgets, yeah. As far as a tactical, each time you come up with, the plans change. Well, some things would have been discussed. So say the first time we did a radio ad, that would have had a broad discussion. But then each time we renew it, we don't renew the same discussion. They'll say, I want to renew it. We had this type of attitude. So, and even back to Kira's, like what you're saying about we hear from people, we advertise on the radio, we have partnerships like with sports teams, and or we have a billboard out with the Cyclones, and we do all these different things to just try our billboards, our locations. I mean, another thing is like the shift that I made is our locations, they're marketing. I see them completely as marketing, because it's not like I'm waiting for that guy to drive past and go, oh yeah, by the way, I needed a compressor today, let me pull in this place. There's Durante. Oh wait, there's another Durante. Oh, there's another Durante place. Oh yeah, we should use Durante. It's that constant. Wherever they go, within a few mile radius, they see one of us. Just like how when you want coffee, you'll figure out where the nearest Starbucks is, because it's the product. The familiarity.
Kathy, I'm going to come right to it. I just want to make one comment too, and I can't see the whole Durante team up there, what they're wearing today. Obviously, Chris is in a more formal attire here today, right? Every time Susan or I or any of us on the team are over at Durante, every single person you see there is wearing a Durante shirt. The yellow, the black, it's not mixed messaging stuff, so they're not 9 locations.
No.
Their 9 locations all have that same standard look, and you really look at what's on John's laptop right there.
On her book,
But
your book.
they're on the book, and everyone's wearing all that too. Kathy, I promise I'll go back to you.
Yeah, when you were talking about your various locations, can you share a little bit about what goes into the thought process of starting up another location? And part B, do you hold all your locations to the same performance standards?
What goes into the locations is pretty much a checklist that John has. John is able.
In determining where that's going?
Yeah, it's very, very specific, where we look at traffic counts, we look at location, what else is near it, is there a Home Depot nearby, who's the anchor that's near, what are the contractors in the room. So, there's a whole bunch of things that we look at. You got to figure out what's unique to your business and say why to go there. There's a ton of different things, and it would take me all day to go through. But John has a very specific checklist, and he'll walk down and go, this thing has met this has met this. And John's just really good at finding locations.
We were in their dungeon, cave, knock center, whatever you want to call it. They were considering a new location. These guys had screens all over the place, Google Earth maps coming down from the sky, looking at traffic patterns, all this stuff, It's like, whoa. John, go ahead.
Well, the other thing we do is, a lot of people will get fixated on one town. I want to be in New Rochelle, and then they try to find the best spot in New Rochelle. We've got about anywhere, usually from 8 to 20 towns that we want to be in. And it could be Connecticut, Jersey, it could be as far up as Bridgeport and as far south as Atlantic City. We're not that far, but, and we look so we identify, we want to be in any one of these 12 towns, or any one of these 20 towns. And then we're just constantly looking for property in those towns that fit the checklist. And we've already identified that if the right thing comes up in one of these towns, we want to be there. So I think that's helped us as well, because I feel a lot of people, they determine the one town they need to be in, and then they really limit themselves, and they kind of pick the wrong spot in the right town because they're so set on that town. So by doing that, it just really leaves us flexible. And we're shocked sometimes, like our heart's set on these 6, but one comes up within the next 6, and we're like, that's the right spot, So.
to John's point, the timing isn't always where we want, where one will come up before the other, and that drives me sort of nuts. I'm like, wait a second, we already opened 2 this year. Yeah, but this came up, and it's right where we need to be. And now I'm in very, very uncomfortable mode right now. And like, we got to open up another one, and like, no. But
That's when we gotta get under the hood.
so, perfect example, the West Nyack one. So, there was West Nyack was right across the street from a mall. There was a Westchester Burger from the Palisades Mall, and no restaurant ever did well there. They all failed, unfortunately. And this was a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. And we walked in. I'm like, what the hell are we doing with a restaurant? This is crazy. There's no way we're doing this. We walked outside, and within a half an hour, 16 to 18 construction trucks passed that. I'm like, yeah, we're getting that. You know, we had business in there before we had signs up. People were like, are you guys open? And we had to rip out this beautiful restaurant. We did keep the bar. So the bar is there, and they actually extended it because it was really nice, and that's the counter. So the bar is actually there. So
Do you lease or purchase?
we try to buy it if we can.
You own a couple of
Yeah,
them?
we try to buy them. You know, it's the hard part is, well, here's if you're a brick and mortar, so we're brick, mortar, and steel. If you're a brick and mortar strategy, it's good to own. It's really good to own it. But then you have to have the financial discipline to put a lot of money aside because it's that down payment, it's the opening, this and that. It's not even so much the cost to open, because John has been really good about figuring out how much we really need to open. So between we can spread the equipment, you know, however we need to do, it's still the other cost of opening. And we sort of learn how we go, and we've done really well on greenfields. I think Josh was asking me about at greenfield, meaning a new location, or acquisition. What's the best way to go? So we've done only one acquisition, a small company, and while all the employees are still with us, we doubled their sales, so it was a good acquisition. We wanted to just try it. But unless you're getting for us, it doesn't really matter unless you're getting some really good people. That's the real main reason why you're paying what you're paying for it, is because you got 5, 6, 10 people that are going to be game changers for your either fillers or like of holes that you had in your staff, or they're going to be game changers. Otherwise, do greenfield. Is that?
Can I offer that also?
Yeah.
We've also, I think, on 2 of our locations, we worked with the SBA
Yeah.
too, right? And if you guys are looking to ever buy property and you haven't worked with them, it's a lot of paperwork and it's a lot of hassle. But like if you go to buy, let's say, $1 million property, instead of having to come up with $250,000, you only have to come up with $100,000. That's all big money difference.
Big.
But, you know, if it's a $500,000, then half those numbers.
Yeah.
But it was, when they first came in and pitched it, like we thought they were crooks, and like it all seemed too good to be true.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
didn't
another
believe it.
avenue if you guys are ever looking to do that.
Yeah,
That
the-
really
the-
helped us in the beginning.
The paperwork's a pain in the neck. It's a miserable experience, but
Expenses on the front.
is it worth $100,000? Yeah. So, Josh.
You've talked a lot about culture and a culture of growth and learning. How have you passed that beyond just you guys in the room, but to everybody in your company, that we're a company that likes to grow, we have to change, we're going to constantly change? What have you guys done to facilitate that?
Weekly beatings? No.
We do.
So, and he's doing like that. He got all excited. He's like, "Are we allowed to do that?" No, my HR director is in the room, so I take
Kelly,
that
what do you
back.
think?
Don't need that position.
Team members in general, they see the excitement every single day as we're preparing to open another location, and when we're putting in new systems all the time, and they see that we're all engaged in the same goal. So we just make sure that they're all involved with the same goal that we're trying to get to. And they're happily doing it with us, and everybody seems to be very invested in helping us get, to the end goal.
You're never bored.
Never bored. We try to communicate as best as possible, and things that are too far down the road, we kind of keep under wraps for a little bit until we're really solid, and then once it becomes available, for everybody's general knowledge, then we share it. as soon as we can.
It's an interesting point you're making, and Chris has made this to me a couple times, which is, you know, four of them are going at warp speed. And what they were about to do yesterday, these 3 locations or whatever, today they're doing something else. They said if we were to ever communicate live, real time, to most of the troops, they would think we're nuts. So we wait, right? We go through all our, let me say it better.
Yeah, so, I mean, true example, there was one week I did a ton of research and analysis, this and that, made a 2-hour presentation, we walked through and said, okay, this is the direction that we're going, these are the things we're gonna pursue, these opportunities. 2 days later, a bunch of other opportunities came up, scratch that, now this is the new plan. And then another day later, something else came up, like, scratch that, now this is the new plan. Yeah, you would drive people insane if you did that. But, so we can be that flexible at our level, you could say. But, and we're all for communication, and I think that's something we're still improving on. Because a lot of times I think we're just being more protective of them. Because if we get them going in a different direction, they're going to go different. We can pivot a whole lot faster, both mentally and as the owners and of the business. We can pivot because we know what the end goal is. We know what the real mission is, and we're living and breathing it every single day. So our ability to pivot doesn't have as many constraints on it as theirs, because they want to do a good job. And their job, I was hired to do this. This is my job. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing that they take that. So if you constantly put change in the middle of that, for a lot of people that would be disruptive. So here's the other balance I think we were talking about is, as you're growing, you need to have your go-getters, right? You need the people that are going to go out, but you also need your steady Eddie people. You need your people who are implementers versus just the ones that go out and find and are rainmakers. Because without the implementers, you get all these customers and this and that, and then you fall on your face. You need those people who love to implement. You need that balance between people who will go 1,000,000 miles an hour and be okay with that versus the people who go, oh, hold on there. If we don't do that, we're going to mess up on safety. We're going to have unhappy employees. We're going to have all sorts of other issues where we might get in trouble with the DOT or OSHA. What are we doing as a company now that maybe it didn't matter at 5 million, but at 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, everything changes. So are you willing to adapt and look and the type of people that you hire? Especially when you have, like I think Michelle was saying, or I'm not sure if Michelle was, like if you have.
You're safe and saying Michelle.
Michelle. So if you have a proclivity of hiring a certain type because you are that type. If I'm that type, I see that in another individual, like, oh yeah, that person's like me, I want them on my team. But if you have a team of home run hitters, well, someone's got to get on base for them to bring them in. And if you don't have those single and double hitters, you're never going to score as many runs as you could. I don't know how we're doing on time.
Great. We'll have a close in a few minutes here, and I want to get a couple more questions, but I also want to make sure you made this point about you're scaling when.
Well, you're scaling when, like I said before, when your percentage of costs as a percent, your cost as a percentage of revenue stays in line year after year, and you're still able to grow. Your dollar volume goes up, and your EBITDA's grow up. That's another thing. If your EBITDA grows at a greater, if your EBITDA is growing at a greater percentage than your revenue growth, then you're scaling. You've crossed your fixed cost, and now everything else in your variable cost, and now you're really starting to grow. So you should really start seeing EBITDA grow at a faster rate than revenue growth. If not, then you got efficiency issues. That's probably the key takeaway, I would say, in scaling. Look at your processes. Are you able to do the same as last year with roughly the same amount of people? Then you scale. That's a hard thing to do. But if you can keep putting in systems in place, have you had to have someone else? Have you had to add more work to an individual because they got their job better? In a good way. Now, has the person underneath you delegated to the person underneath them so they could do more high-end stuff or maybe take some of the stuff off your plate. Now you're starting to people scale as they're starting to get really acclimated into their jobs. How are people spending their time? Is your revenue per employee starting to go up? Then you know you're starting to scale. And by the same token, you might have some efficiency issues if it's starting to go down. Or, and here's the other thing, you got to be able to read the tea leaves. Did you add so many more employees for future growth that it did affect that revenue per employee on the short term? Now look 6 months later, but then you got to monitor that. So it's, it's a game of Jenga. You're just constantly pulling a piece out, putting a piece back in, and which one. And you got to have all these things in place so you know when something is going awry. I think that's probably one of the things since we always challenge each other to a point where, that's how we can come up with things like what's going wrong, because we're always challenging each other. Usually in a positive way, sometimes not, if I'm being honest, but even that, when it circles through, you usually find something positive at it. So it's a constant challenge, and again, what do you want to sign up for? There's nothing wrong in this world with 10% growth. It's pretty good. You can have grow very, 10 years, you've doubled in size. Well, less than that, when you do the math,
7.
right? 7 years, you've doubled in size, right? It's pretty awesome. Not that many people do that. So there's nothing wrong with it. Just understand how you go. Understand what you're willing to commit to. Understand who you are as a person and what your tolerance is. And don't commit to something that you're not ready. There's a saying with the Tibetans that I've done spent a lot of time with, is commit to very little, but when you do commit 100%. But commit to very little. I think Westerners we have, and me, will commit to a bunch of different things, and then we get overwhelmed with what we committed to. Like, I committed to too much. Now I'm overcommitted, right? We hear that all the time. I'm overcommitted. Well, don't commit. Commit to very little when you're looking at a growth strategy. We're only going to commit to this. We're only going to commit to that. But do it 100%.
We have time for maybe one more question, Robert.
So you spend a tremendous amount of time, process, and procedures, obviously behind the scenes to ramp up. Talk about a chaotic startups and new buildings and acquisitions. When do you throw those plans out and kind of start them over again? So
All the time.
so
All the
you're-
time.
as
It's
much as you're
it's
writing,
incredibly frustrating. As soon as pretty much as soon as I write them up.
So you're not living or dying by them building the building or job
No.
to job. You're adjusting them by the
Yeah.
nature of the work.
So John, the question was, processes, you document them. I know you're a big Knowledge Owl fan, if people don't know that tool, and this guy is like king process man up here, right? So every process, all work should be a process, right? So John is, I don't know how many you're putting out a day or a week, but he's just, and then you've got the team putting them all out. The question kind of is, how often do you have to revamp them?
All the time. It's really, especially when we pivot, right? Because like I said, that happened in real time. Spent hours, came up, this is the way we're going, are we agreement? Yes, we're all in agreement. 2 days later, this came up. Forget about that, And being able to adjust, that goes back to Napoleon School of Planning. The planning process is really for you to be mentally prepared. That when something comes your way, you know how to deal with it. Not that it has to be, this number has to be right here. It's that you're prepared that when something comes up, good or bad, you as a business owner, as an executive, as a leader, as a visionary, as a leader, as a worker, as a manager, you're prepared. That's how John, those 4 terms John uses. It as a person, I'm a worker, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, I'm also a visionary. So in all of those, when I'm doing my Excel and doing my analysis, I'm a worker. When I have my staff and I'm looking and going over and seeing what they're doing, I'm a manager. As when I'm trying to get them to go to a certain goal that we're starting to reach, I'm a leader. And when I come up with something new, a new process, a new way of going through our business, then I'm a visionary. And as the owners of our companies, you got to embrace all of those. Some of them you're going to gravitate towards, and that's normal. And just finding all those, and that's the opportunity that you have. But you have to be flexible.
Durante has 4 core values that they run the company by, and one of them is a very interesting one. It's being innovative. It's one of their 4 core values.
So-
What are the other 3?
Caring, dependable, positive, and innovative.
And can I plug something here for Ted Miller? You know, so a couple of years ago, you know, as Chris said, you gotta go 40%, you gotta go 10%, whatever you're doing in your business, you gotta read books, you gotta talk to people and learn. And a few years ago, we hit the point that we were really struggling on the processes and the procedures. We read books, we talked to people, and then we came to the conclusion that we hired Ted Miller. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Ted Miller, but, you know, Ted came in and really whipped our processes in shape and really gave us a direction that we were struggling with and that we didn't have. You know, so I don't know if any of you have worked with Ted Miller before, but, you know, like, no joke, I mean, he's been for two and a half years
No,
now.
1 year.
That's it?
It was 1 year.
Wow.
Just feels like it's
Is that on 2 years now?
Last year we came up with that.
So it's 1 year, 1 year, wow,
Right,
it feels like a
more
little
than a
longer
year.
than that. But, you know, he really came in and really showed us the light and a direction of a wrong way that we were kind of traveling. And really helped us to put a lot of great things in place. So I'm not saying it has to be a Ted Miller, but if you're hitting that point with the process and the procedures, and you've really hit your limit, which we did for ourselves, there are people out there that can really, I mean, he changed a lot of things for us in a great direction.
I'll just broaden it, thank you, John,
You're
for saying those kind words. I'll just broaden that a little bit when we, you know, I think when I was kind of first moving into this area and starting to get involved with some of the CEOs of local companies here, I asked them, what are your top 10 learnings? And I asked, I don't know, 20, 30 of them, just to kind of get them, and you would think I would, I kind of wove them all together, and the rest of that, and to a T, it was make sure you're open to outside points of view. You know, find catalysts of change. There's no way that any one of us can possibly have all within ourselves all the knowledge to make all these decisions, right? That's why we're running this conference. The whole conference is about shared learnings, right, and best practices and how we can help one another, so, thanks. So we are gonna close with, Jay's got one last
You know,
question.
you kind of just touched on it, but the reason I was gonna ask that, when you said how important it was to keep the procedures kind of going at the same time. And I had a company that we were growing 20, 30, 40% for a couple of years, and we had a hard time keeping up with the processes. And you said that number of the revenue and all that kind of stuff being tied to it. Obviously, you brought Ted in to help you with that, but was there a lapse that you had there for a while? When you're growing so fast, you don't have, I mean, I think it was Best Buy
Absolutely.
kind of screwed up that for a long time.
Everybody hates
Everybody
documenting.
did that.
Everyone hates documenting
Yeah,
processes
nobody
and
likes it.
procedure. Nobody likes it.
But-
And until you build, like, you know, when a problem happens and say, how will we never do that again? Right? That's John's favorite question. How will we never make sure that this glass gets here instead of here? Okay, now write it up. Because I never want to hear that complaint again. Right? Don't come back to me with that. Because I asked you, how do we make sure? Yeah, it might happen. But at least now we have the written procedure. So if it happens once and never again, yeah, you probably don't need to write up a procedure with all the things you have going on in your life. But if it happens again and again, write it up so now we know, and then the next person will know. So you have to, you know, you have to really set rewards around it. Yeah.
What are the other, what are the tools that you're using? Are you like using Salesforce or something like that? Is that?
Knowledge Owl. So we write it up, and so someone will write it up in an email or a Word document, and it'll get published on an intranet or, you know, repository that's web-based called Knowledge Owl, and then it has a search capability. So if I said, you know, what's the process for filing an expense report, there's something there, and you just, it's, you know, it's pretty basic and simple.
And I may have this wrong, but the CEO took the time to write about the first 25 of them. So it's
The first 300.
the first 2,300 of them. So it's leading by example, right? You recognize how important that is. Chris, parting words, couple top lessons learned.
And back to what I said, just understand if you want to grow, who your team is, who you are, what's your risk tolerance, what are you comfortable, are you comfortable being uncomfortable? Because you will be. You know, it's just natural. And if you can do that, then you'll be fine. Surround yourself with people who are gonna, who complement your talents, who will challenge you in the areas where you have knee-jerk reactions, where you have sensitivities, where you have fear-based or, you know, decision-making or the things you can't stand. Bring people who will challenge you, and you'll grow from that challenge. So I think you cannot grow as a company unless you are committed to your own personal growth as a human being. I really I see the two go hand in hand, because I'm a much better entrepreneur than I was when I had my own company. We've all said this, that we're much better together than we were on our own. We all had our own companies. This is my 4th company. So I've done this before, but never to this size, never to this much. I've never been challenged so much. John's taught me more in these last 8 years than the first 20 that I had. And I had really wonderful clients who taught me a lot. So I think it's really a commitment to yourself, and it's interesting. It's interesting. I won't always say fun, because it's not. It's not always fun. Sometimes it sucks working on Sundays, and sometimes it sucks working, and seeing everything kind of blow up sometimes. It does. That's the reality of it. But every business has a shit sandwich. If I can be vulgar, every business has a shit sandwich. Are you willing to eat the shit sandwich in yours? If not, don't do it. Don't do it, because you should be willing to eat the shit sandwich. Ours is, a lot of risk, a lot of, constantly scrambling, moving at light speed, pivoting. I never get a comfort zone where I can just say, great, this is the way it is, and it's going to go forward, because it's going to change 20 days later, and it's going to piss me off. But then you just get over it, and you move on. And, I get my next 20 days of stability, and then it changes again. So you just learn to live with that, you just live in your own little delusion for 20 days, and then, but that's just part of it. And then in the end, after you've gone through all that, you look back and go, hey, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Chris Jones, you're a remarkable individual, and I'm sure I'm reflecting some of the thoughts in the room here. We so appreciate your sharing. Okay, as you're starting to get the process down here, we take a break, okay?